so here is the Reddick Property Rating ebook. It's available for download on our website. I just want to quickly find out how many, and those of you on the call, that have actually read the ebook. So I'm going to do a poll, and I love doing polls. They're really fun and give us a chance to kind of figure out a little bit more information about, a little more interactive, just to see who's on the call tonight. So you should see a screen in front of you. Let's see, asking if you've ever heard of the ebook, if you've heard of it, you just haven't seen it yet, if you've glanced through it before, or if you've actually read the whole thing. So I'll give you guys maybe 10 more seconds to fill that out. Okay, looks like just about everybody. Oh, got a few more people trickling in. Yeah, it should be super easy. Just click which one applies to you. I've actually got 3 more polls, and this is my favorite part of the presentation, just to see what we can, what kind of information we can share. Okay. So it looks like pretty good split. About 38% haven't heard of it before, 25% have heard of it but haven't actually seen it, 13% glanced through it, and then a quarter of you guys have read it entirely. So that's good. We've got a mixed audience on tonight's presentation. So I hope by the end that you're able to download it, and I'll make that available for everybody on the call, and we'll go over it in a little more detail. So this is basically why we wrote the ebook. We've got different markets all over the country. Some markets are better for certain properties, maybe multi-units. Some markets have very, very different, obviously different price points and different median home prices. Different markets attract different types of renters. Even within those markets, we'll see very different types of rental properties in different zip codes and different neighborhoods of a particular market. And a market, obviously we've got all different types of investors, as I mentioned before. Some investors looking for newer properties and the strongest, safest, best zip codes. We've got different people looking for higher returns that might not be as interested in the zip codes or the crime rates or the school districts. So within real estate, there's 4 different ways to profit. 4 main ways to profit from buying investment property. And many of you are familiar with, of course, positive cash flow. Over time, in the right parts of the country and the right parts of a particular market or neighborhood, we tend to see more appreciation. When you leverage real estate and you make a down payment and you borrow the rest from the bank, you get to enjoy the benefit of principal pay down, and that's building wealth, building your net worth, simply by the reduction in the principal balance of your loan. So as long as your monthly income from a property covers your payments, your liability on that loan decreases every single month. And if your liability decreases and the asset value stays the same or increases, then you're actually increasing your net worth or building wealth. And then, of course, there are many tax benefits, such as depreciation, mortgage interest. So we get to enjoy tax write-offs from owning rental properties. So one more quick question to you is, which one is most important to you? Are you most interested in increasing your passive income? Are you looking at building wealth and you're looking to increase your capital appreciation on real estate? Are you looking to benefit from the principal paydown, or are you most interested in tax benefits? So I'm going to ask you folks on tonight's call, which is most important to you. So you've got a poll in front of your screen again. Go ahead and click which one. I know it's a bit difficult because I think they're all important as well, but let me know which one you think is really the main driving force for you investing in real estate. And I'll give you guys maybe another 10 or 15 seconds to fill that out. And I'll be able to share it. So obviously it's an anonymous poll. It's not going to be sharing names, but it'll tell us the percentage of people on the call that are looking for a particular benefit. Looks like most of you have submitted your responses. A couple more seconds for anyone that hasn't yet. All right. Here we go. It looks like by a pretty large victory here would be positive cash flow. 71% on the call are mainly purchasing for cash flow. 10% looking for appreciation being the main reason they're buying real estate. And about 19% that feel that no one is more important than the other. So the answer I always tell people is that no one particular benefit is better than the other. It simply depends on your financial situation, depends on your life situation. I always like to compare the example of my father who just retired a year ago, and in his retirement, what he's truly looking for in his investments is income to supplement his employment earned income that he's no longer receiving, versus my little brother who's 27 and has another 30 to 40 years until he retires. My brother wants to be building wealth, so he's buying in the property classes that have more appreciation, and my father is buying in property classes that have more cash flow. So let's continue so we can see more about what all that really means. So any property in the country can be classified as either luxury, A, oh, we still have the poll up. Thank you, Kristen. Get rid of that. Okay. Any property in the country can be classified as either luxury class, A, B, C, or D. This is something that is a universal scale, can be used anywhere in the country, and it depends upon the median home price in a particular metropolitan market, comparing that to the value of the home. So 5 property classes. And one thing that I've always been asked, and always a question that comes up is, what type of tenants are going to be attracted to my property? Let's say I own a property, or I'm looking at buying a property in a particular city, in a particular neighborhood. What type of people can I expect that will be interested or might possibly rent my property? So this is something that we came up with. It's very general. It's a rule of thumb. It's not always going to be 100% accurate. However, we found this to be true. Large majority of the time, you'll find different types of people renting different types of property. And that's something that I think is all pretty self-explanatory. So when you're looking at luxury class or A-class properties, you tend to have tenants who college educated, particularly, in many cases, they have a profession. I like to say that they have a little bit more of a career rather than a job. They specialize in something, usually white collar or self-employed or business owner, upper level manager. When you get down to B class, you typically see either young adults who aren't very far in their career yet, or mid-level managers. And then when we get down to C class, we're typically seeing hourly wage employees. We're typically seeing more blue-collar types of employment in the tenants that rent these properties. And then D class can be classified as low income, below the poverty line, maybe Section 8. And what I find very common with people who are looking at renting A-class properties or luxury class properties, it's very common that they have owned property in the past. They may have experience owning property, and maybe they moved to a different area. They're not sure if they're ready to buy a property there yet, or perhaps something happened in their life that doesn't allow them to qualify to buy property. I mean, these days there's a lot of qualifying criteria, so perhaps their credit changed and they're no longer able to own property. With B and C class, it's a little bit more common that people renting those properties may never have owned property before, and may never in the future. And it's a mindset that not everybody in America shares, and most of us on the call tonight either own a home or have plans to own property in the near future. And that's not the case with everybody. It takes a certain level of education, and it takes a certain level of desire that not everybody has. So luckily there are people that do rent properties and keep our properties occupied, but this is a little bit better of an idea of the demographic in each property class. So In front of you now should be a scale, and this is really where the heart of the Reddick Property Rating ebook lies. This is where we have been able to test and test over and over and over again over the last several years to come up with the Reddick Property Rating for any property. Now, you're looking at two scales. The one on the top is for single-family residences, and the one below it is on a per-unit basis. Now, the first thing that we're going to need to obtain is the median home price wherever our property exists. And if we're looking at a property that's worth less than half of the median home in that market, then it would be considered a D-class property. If the property is worth half up to 80%, it's a C-class. I'm looking at single-family residences at the top. 80% of the median up to the median, B-class. The median up to 1.3 times the median, A-class, and then anything more than 1.3 times the median is luxury class. Now, you'll notice that what happens if we're looking at a property that is exactly the same price or value as the median? Or what if we're looking at a property that's exactly 80% or exactly 50%? So there's going to be some compensating factors that I'm going to go over in a moment if we're looking at a property that's right on the border. And then, of course, if we're looking at multi-units, if we're looking at a duplex or fourplex, we need to adjust the scale a little bit because the median home value that we're using is on a detached single-family home, and we know that a detached single-family home of the exact same size, square footage, bed and bath, comparing it to an attached condo or townhome or unit in a building is not going to be the same value because of the fact that it's attached. So we have to adjust it a little bit. Now, I'm going to share with you some appreciation history in several different markets. So all of our data comes from Realtor.com, which is the National Association of Realtors. And we're looking at the median home price in Orange County over the last 26 years, 25, 26 years. So each major metropolitan market is classified as an MSA by a National Association of Realtors. That stands for Metropolitan Statistical Area. And for Orange County, it's considered Anaheim, Santa Ana, and Irvine. So we can see what the price history has been in Orange County over the last 26 years. Very interesting to see not much activity in the 90s, and then all of a sudden, right around 2000, we've seen double-digit appreciation for about 7 years straight, and then we saw a pretty big crash in 2008, 25% decrease, and little increases and decreases since then, and we've seen some pretty good appreciation over the last 3 or 4 years, and our median home price is very close right now to what it was in 2007. So when we look at this data, we can figure out what the average appreciation has been over the last 25 years. And when we add it all up, at the very bottom, you see it says 4.9%. So this is very important for us to obtain because when we own a property for the foreseeable future of, let's say, 10 years or longer, we're going to want to know how much appreciation we can expect on that property. Now, it might not be the main reason we're purchasing it, but it's still important to know roughly what our overall return on investment is going to be over time. So when we look at all of the last 25 years, we're looking at 4.9%. The reason that we have to go back so far is because we have to account for multiple cycles. You can see that if we had the data from 1989 to 2007, the data would obviously be very, very skewed. Same thing if we're only looking at 2007 to 2014, the data would be very skewed. So we have to look at multiple cycles. And our findings, if you look at data on above a 20-year or more history, you tend to get at least 2 cycles in that 20 years. So if we take this data, we use it in Orange County. I'm using this as an example. You can see the table here on the left is the prices from the graph. We can see that currently anything in Orange County that's a single family worth less than $343,950 would be considered D-class. So we can use this now to evaluate properties in our local market here of Orange County, and I'm going to share with you a few different out-of-state markets as well. but it's very helpful. You can identify this within minutes, within seconds even. If we know that currently, as of the end of 2014, we're not done with 2015 as of today's date, so we're just going to take what was given to us at the end of last year and use that median right there, 687,900. We should be able to get quarterly data from NAR, but I like to look at it on a yearly basis to compare all the previous years. Let's look at another market, Cape Coral, Florida. So Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Florida is a market that we're heavily involved in, an amazing investment market, much lower median home price. It provides the ability to get very high positive cash flow. It's also a market where we find much newer properties. So we look at the same date range from 1989 until the beginning of this year. We can see that right now we're currently looking at somewhere close to $200,000 being the median, and it kind of tells a pretty similar story of what happened to California, a huge upswing, dramatic crash, and then now back on the upswing again. So average appreciation in this market over the last 25 years, 6.1%. We take the median from the end of 2014, 188,700, and we plug it into our graph, and there we go. One more example here, Indianapolis. So we can see that not every market had the same history as California or Florida. A lot of markets in the Midwest, like Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, had much more stable growth. Texas didn't experience the same upswing or the same dramatic drop that we did here in California. So even though Indianapolis hasn't seen any significant increases year by year, their average annual appreciation is 2.9%. Interesting to see that it's so close to California and Florida, even when we think of a market like Indianapolis as not really being an appreciating market. But you can see that it's had an increase almost every single year, and not really much of a dramatic decrease. So the median in Indianapolis, the capital of Indiana, right now is about 144,000. Probably a little bit higher this year, but we can take the data from the end of 2014, plug it into our graph, and we know if we're looking at a home a little bit above 144,000 that it's considered A-class. So I'm going to be showing you some slides that are going to have a very strong impact on analyzing properties, calculating your cash flow, calculating your returns, and you'll see why all this information is so important. So Ross and I got together, and as a staff, we took a look at all the data in all these markets. We looked at the median home price appreciation in about 50 different markets. And one thing we realized was that a particular market in 1 year can have a very big increase or a very big decrease, but it might not be sustainable. And we saw that in California and Florida, Arizona, Nevada. So we felt that we really wanted to remove any factors that might not be relevant anymore. And you can think of, like, let's say with the 2000 era, the dot-com boom, 2001 we had the 9/11 terrorist attack. There are oftentimes inventions or global circumstances that can affect the market for the short term, but it might not have a very long-term effect. So we felt that it would be in our best interest to put a cap on appreciation. So looking back on Florida, we saw that the appreciation rate there was 6.1% on average. We feel that it's best for us to really just put a cap at 5% for A-class, 4.5% for B-class, and 4% for C-class. So let me explain how this works. So the median home price that we use actually reflects a B-class property. So looking back on Indianapolis, that 2.9%, we assign that appreciation rate to all of the B-class properties that we're looking at, because we know that an A-class property is going to have more appreciation because of the location than a B-class, and a C-class property is going to have less because of the location. What really influences property classes more than anything is the neighborhood, the crime rates, the school districts, really the location. So we can't say that every property in an entire metropolitan market is going to experience the same rate of appreciation. So again, we take the median over the last 25 years and we use that for B-class properties, and we increase it 0.5% for A, and we reduce it 0.5% for C. And that was this slide actually right here. So here's what really is the largest influencing factors on a property class. Things that matter are the price point. The price point is going to be influenced largely by the school districts, the crime rates, and the demand to live in a particular neighborhood. So the cost per square foot and the price point are going to tell us what the property class is, and it's going to be based on things like the location, the neighborhood, how desirable it is to live in a particular area. What really doesn't matter a lot in determining a property class is whether a property is a condo, a townhome, a detached single-family home, how old the property is, how big the property is, and what the condition of a property is, don't really have much of an impact. It has a slight impact, but not very much at all. And we can think of locations near the coast. We can think of locations near ski resorts, near lakes, near very desirable places to visit and live. You can find a property, I know in my area here in Newport Beach, close to the water. You can find basically a teardown or a completely dilapidated 1 or 2 bedroom condo will still be worth over $1 million, and it could be 60 or 70 or 80 years old, and it's the land that really provides the value. Because it's the land that provides the value, it really doesn't have much of an impact on how old the property is or how big it is. And then on the opposite end, you can build a gigantic 5-bedroom, 3,500 square foot home, brand new from the ground up, in the heart of Detroit, or a market that is not seeing very strong growth right now, and it's still going to be considered, a CUD class property because of the location. So let's talk a little bit about properties that are on the border, and you're going to find properties that might be worth right around the median. They might be worth right around 80%. So this is what we found. If you're looking at a property and it's within 5% of the border, so we take the median, let's use an easy example. Let's just say the median home price in a particular market is $100,000, and we're looking at a property that's worth about $95,000, $96,000, and we're not sure whether it would be considered a B-class or an A-class property. So you've got to look at the potential to increase value in a particular property, right? Because the property class is also a large reflection of the neighborhood. So if we're looking at a property that's new construction, brand new property, or let's say it's been completely remodeled, it's a rent-ready turnkey property, and it's really close to the border, there's probably not a lot we can do to that property to add value and bump it up. Now, if we're looking at a property that needs work done to it, if it needs rehab work, or if we know we can redo the flooring, or if we need to redo the kitchen or the bathrooms, if this property needs some work to it and it's really close to the border, then we know we're probably going to add value to it after doing the rehab work, and that might bump the property up. So there are instances where a property can go from a C or B, or from a B or C, or a B to A, or A to B. And if we're looking at a property that's on the opposite end, let's say it's for sale for $101,000 or $102,000, and the median's 100, then it's just the reverse basically. If it's completely remodeled turnkey property, we're going to have to look at the location to see if this is a property that we can add value to or not. So really depends on what can be done to the property to add value, and if it's basically got all the bells and whistles already, then it's probably going to pull down the property value, and if it can be rehabbed and remodeled and value can be added, it's going to bump it up. So here's some rules for remodeling, because this is very important, and many of us own properties or are looking at properties that might need a little bit of work to them. So when it comes to renovating a property, what we found is that $10,000 is an interesting threshold. So if we spend less than $10,000 to rehab a property, what we're going to find is that for every dollar we spend to rehab the property, it's going to increase the value by 1.2. So, you know, let's say a job that costs $10,000 or just under $10,000 is going to increase the value by 12,000. So if we look at a little bit of a larger rehab, and if we look at a rehab job that needs more than $10,000, we can multiply every dollar spent by 1.5. So if we're looking at a job that, let's just say, $20,000, if we're looking at a job that needs $20,000, it could potentially increase the value $30,000. Now, of course, that's not going to be in every case, right? You've got to look at what you're spending your money on. And if you're doing things that add value to a property, like redoing the kitchen, remodeling the floors, remodeling bathrooms, that's going to have certainly a big impact on the property. If you're looking at you know, doing things like just simply landscaping and that's it, you know, that might not have the same effect or impact on a property if you were to spend that money on the kitchen, bathroom, and flooring. That will have a much more visible impact on the value of a property. So this slide here is really why we're talking about all this stuff, because as an investor, we want to know if when we're buying a property, how much potential maintenance and vacancy that property is going to have. We can't say that buying a property in a particular metropolitan market, no matter what you're buying, is going to have the same amount of maintenance and vacancy. Now, we know that's not true. Think of where you're living, whether you live in Los Angeles, Orange County, Houston, Dallas, Florida, you know, Cape Coral, Florida, where it is you live. Think of the market that you live in. You might be living in a very large market with 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people living there, or even more. Now we know that there are very different neighborhoods that exist within a given metropolitan market. So we have to find the property class, and based on the property class, we're going to have a different amount of maintenance and vacancy over time. That's because of the location, and the location is going to have it's going to impact the type of people we have in the property. So all of this, the type of property is going to have an impact on the maintenance and vacancy. The people living in the property are going to have an impact. So what we're looking at is a percentage based on property class for residential properties on the top, commercial properties on the bottom, and we're going to want to use those just as a conservative estimate. Real estate investing is an art, not a science. It's one thing that I've found throughout the years, is that it's not an exact science. You can be conservative and you can use worst case scenarios, or you can do one of the biggest beginner mistakes and not be conservative and use best case scenarios. And then you tend to be upset or surprised when your expectations aren't met. So we're going to set our expectations on a very conservative basis, and we're going to use these percentages of the monthly rent. So maintenance and vacancy, right? These aren't, first of all, vacancy is not an expense. It's a loss of income. Maintenance is an expense. It is an expense. However, it's not going to be an expense every month, hopefully, for most properties. We can go a year or 2 years without a maintenance expense, depending on the property. And then we might have to replace the flooring, and that could cost us $2,000. We might even have to do paint as well, and that might need to be another $1,500. So it's not uncommon, if you go a long time without maintenance, that you may have to end up spending a few $1,000s in maintenance all at once, right? So that's what we want to prepare and plan for. We want to put the reserves aside. We want to set that money that we're making every month in our maintenance reserve or vacancy reserve, and we just want to keep it available. We just want to have it handy for when we need it. So let's talk about vacancy. Here's an example of vacancy. Take the percentage of vacancy for a particular property class and multiply it by 365. So for an A-class property, 8% of 365 is 29.2. That's letting us know that if we use 8% in our calculations for vacancy, we're allowing ourselves to have 1 month every year for vacancy. We might get lucky and have the same tenant stay for 2, 3, or 4 years, but if we own this property over a 10, 15, 20-year period, like many of us do and many of us will, there might be instances where we have a 60-day vacancy. We might even have a 90-day vacancy. Let's say if the property goes vacant in the wintertime, and if it's located in a cold climate, it's not uncommon that you might go 90 days. So we want to look at what our returns are or expected to be before we buy a property. So we're going to use these percentages. So take that percent, multiply it. So you can say 10% is obviously 36.2. 13% I think comes out to 42 days a year. So if you're looking at 47 days, thanks Kristen. If you're looking at a financial pro forma somewhere out there on the internet and the seller or the real estate company has 5%, think about that for a second. They're saying 5%. They're basically telling you that every year you'll have a maximum of 18 days vacancy. So let's say when that property does go vacant, you've only prepared for an 18-day or basically less than 3-week vacancy. To have the tenants move out and the move-out inspection done, to have the property managers go in the property, look at the property, assess what it needs and fix up, call a contractor if you need one for things like appliance repair or flooring. Contractors need to then come and visit the property, put together a quote, send you the quote, you look at the quote, and then you might even say, you know what, I want to compare it with another contractor. So you might ask them for a reference, or you might find another contractor yourself. You call them, the second one goes out to the property, they send you the bid, and you say, okay, this is what I'm comfortable doing to the property. Then the crew or the contractor has to visit the property, do the repair work. Property manager then verifies the work's been done, sends you pictures. Meanwhile, they have to advertise the property for rent, take all the interest calls, have people fill out applications, show the property. So this is obviously a lot of stuff to do, and to have somebody move into the property within 3 weeks, I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's very uncommon and it's difficult. So I think anything less than 8% is just unrealistic. So what about new construction properties, right? Because if we're buying a new home or a home that's only a few years old, then obviously we know it's not going to have a lot of maintenance. Well, it's not going to have a lot of maintenance in the beginning, right? So how long does a property go until it would fall back to the maintenance percentages that we just shared on the other screen? So this is something we tested also looked at properties all over the country in all different age categories. All of us here, by the way, at Marshall Reddick Real Estate own investment property. I've been an investor for 8 years now. Ross has been an investor for 7 years. And so, you know, and all of us colleagues, Patrick Prunty's owned property for over 10 years. Kristen, who's our real estate advisor on the call, I haven't introduced her yet, owns 5 investment properties, and she'll have a chance to speak in a little bit. So what we found is that within the first 6 years of a property's life, there's a significantly reduced amount of maintenance. And somewhere after the 6th year, it kind of falls back into, you know, the regular category of common maintenance that a particular property might have. So if a property is less than 6 years old, then these are the maintenance percentages we can use for A-class, B-class, and C-class properties. So what does the maintenance percentage mean? Well, just like vacancy, we multiply that percentage by the monthly rent. And if we're looking at an A-class property within 6 years old, we use 5%, multiply it by the monthly rent, in this example $1,250, $62.50 per month. Again, keep in mind, this is not an expense that you're going to be paying every month. This is money going into your pocket that you want to set aside for when you eventually do have a maintenance issue. So what really makes all this possible to calculate is the Marshall Reddick Financial Calculator on our website. This is something that we designed and worked on for 2 years before it was implemented on our website. It's available on marshallreddick.com. Any property you look at is going to have the complete financial calculator. You can modify all the fields. Everything with a box around it is a field that you can edit. You can change the prices, the down payments, the interest rates, the amount of years on the loan. And this is all available on marshreddick.com. So we're looking at a particular example, and you'll notice at the very top that we can look at a property based on conventional financing, a cash purchase, or private financing. And private financing is something that we offer in-house for folks who are not able to qualify for conventional financing. There are no qualification guidelines. Doesn't matter what your credit score is, doesn't matter what your income level is, as long as you have a down payment. Now the interest rate is going to be a little bit higher, about 7 to 8.5%, but this is on a 15-year or 30-year loan. This is not an adjustable rate mortgage. This is a fixed interest rate loan. So we're looking at a particular property, and it tells us at the top the purchase price, down payment, rehab amount, and closing costs. Now we estimate those closing costs for you on our website. So this is, I guess this would be the top portion. Going down a little bit further, we'll look at things like the rent, and then we're going to add in there the default, vacancy, and maintenance based on the property class. But you can change those numbers and look at how much the cash flow changes based on different amounts of maintenance and vacancy. We're going to have the property management fee, the leasing fee that the property manager charges to provide a new tenant, whether there's an HOA on the property. So we have to look at this for a second here, right? Because those of you that own rental properties know that you're not paying property taxes every month. Unless they're impounded with your lender, they're due twice a year. How about insurance? Is insurance paid every month? No, insurance is paid once a year for the annual policy. Maintenance, as I mentioned earlier, maintenance is not going to be a monthly expense. It's certainly not going to be the same amount every month. Management fee is paid every month. So you're going to have 8% or 7% or 9% or whatever that percentage is. That's going to be deducted right out of the monthly rent, and then you're sent the balance from your property manager. Leasing fee is not a monthly fee. Leasing fee is only when somebody moves out of your property and the property manager provides a new tenant. HOAs are usually paid quarterly or semi-annually. So in order for us to look at the monthly cash flow, we have to average all these expenses out. So we obtain the annual taxes, we average it out monthly, we obtain the annual insurance premium, we average it out monthly. With leasing fee, because that, you know, when you own a property for a long amount of time, you're going to have tenants stay in that property for longer than a year. So the number that shows up on our financial calculator is based on paying a leasing fee every 18 months. Now, very, 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 very few leases are actually going to say 18 months. They're going to say 12 months, and hopefully that person renews. But what we found is that the average tenant, the average landlord owning a property for 10 to 15 years, on average, sees a new tenant come and go every 18 months. Some might stay 2 years, some might stay 1, some might stay 3. So we just average that out over 18 months. Now, what I really love most about the financial calculator is what's on the very end, and it says return on investment. So we'll look at the annual appreciation rate. We get that straight from the National Association of Realtors on those graphs that we were just looking at. You can look at what happens to the returns based on how long I hold this property for. So right there, years held, it says 15. And that's what our website's going to default to, but you can type in 4 years or 8 years or 50 years. And see what happens to the returns over time, because as you hold this property for longer, you're going to have more accumulated cash flow, you're going to have more potential appreciation. Eventually the loan balance is going to be paid off, so you're going to have all of that equity in the property just by that renter or those renters paying off your principal balance. And then you're going to have some selling expenses. When you sell a property, we estimate 9% of the sales price of the property. 6% standard realtor fees, and an additional 3% for things like fixing up the property. Sometimes buyers might make an offer on the property and want you to pay a little bit of their closing costs. So you see this on here, it says total projected profit. What's mind-blowing to me is that I don't see that anywhere on any other company, on any other website. Nobody estimates the projected profit of a property. When you invest in something, when you make an investment, don't you want to know what your potential is for profit? Don't you want to know how much money you're going to be making? Rather than just guessing and hoping, well, you know, I hope I make profit on this, or maybe I'll make $50,000 or $100,000, or who knows, right? So this tells us down to the exact penny. Now it's not of course going to be a guarantee. There's no guarantees in real estate, but it is going to give us a very conservative estimate based on all the information. The one thing you're not going to see on this financial calculator is an estimate for rent increases. And for me, it makes me very nervous to tell people that the rent is going to increase a certain percentage every year. I haven't found any data on NAR. I haven't found any reliable data source for rent increases in a particular market. So that's kind of icing on the cake for me. My rents have gone up on a couple of my properties. I have a property that's been the same rent for 6 years. I have another property where the rent's gone up on average every 12 to 24 months. So it's really different. It really depends. So I like to just leave that out. But we can see what the cash-on-cash return is on an annual basis, what the return on investment is on an annual basis. Very, very useful. MarshReddick.com. You can go on there now and use it for free. So the easiest way to remember property classes is a very, very appropriate designation for each one, where A class is going to have more appreciation, B class is going to have a bit of a combination of both, and C class is going to have more cash flow. A appreciation, B both, C cash flow. And real estate's fun, right? Because it has this sort of sliding scale. And when you're looking at the property classes, when you're further to the left in a particular market, you're going to find that luxury properties are obviously going to be the highest priced properties. And when you're further to the right, you're going to find lower priced properties. But what you get with that is also more appreciation further to the left you are, and more cash flow further to the right. Higher tenant quality to the left, lower tenant quality to the right. So all of this has an impact on your return. So right now we have a little over 1,000 properties on our website. Not all of them are available. We have properties that are under contract. We have properties that have sold. We have properties that are available. Properties that are being added every single day. So we did like one big group test, I guess, to see what the average cash-on-cash return was, what the average ROI was, and then the same thing with the median. We found that with C-class properties, just like you can see on here, tend to have a higher cash-on-cash return, but tend to have a lower return on investment. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, over time, we are making our money, you know, our monthly income from cash flow, but we're not seeing much appreciation. So we're not seeing a lot of increase in value on that property. So when we go to sell that property eventually, our ROI, return on investment, which is calculated after you sell a property, is going to be lower because we didn't see a lot of increase in value. Now, on a A-class property, we tend to see more appreciation. So that appreciation is just building and building and building every year. And as the value of the property increases, if we're seeing that same percentage of increase, 3, 4, 5%, that amount is just going to compound and build every single year. Eventually, we're going to see a higher return on investment because of such a large increase in value. So which property class is best for you? Now, I'd like to ask all of you on the call to do a little poll again, and I'm curious to see which property class do you feel helps you achieve your goals best. So I'm going to put up another. I don't think I ever shared the last one. Did I ever share this one? Did you guys ever see the results from the last one? Okay, so let's do one more here. So which property class do you feel fits you best? A for appreciation, B for both, or C for cash flow? I'll give you guys about 10 to 15 seconds to fill that out, and then I'll go ahead and share the results again. All right. Now, from my end, it almost looks like the voting polls on the presidential election. I'm not going to tell you who the candidates are that I'm thinking of for each, but I can kind of see as all the answers coming in. All right, so looks like most of you have given your thoughts on this, so let's take a look. So we've got a pretty large percentage looking for a little bit of a balance of appreciation and cash flow. We have some investors who are more interested in their wealth, growing their wealth by appreciation, and we've got about 25% of you that are more interested in cash flow. That's a pretty cool mix, in my opinion. I think it's just a testament to see that investors are so different. All right, so now comes my favorite part of the presentation, is crunching the numbers. So over the next 5-6 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you how to calculate cash-on-cash return and how to calculate return on investment. And then all these numbers and calculations will make a lot more sense after we go through these examples. So if you're like my brother and you have very little debt, you have very little living expenses, you have decent income, and you have a long time until you retire, then you're looking at growing your wealth, and you might want to find more appreciation and maybe a little bit of cash flow, but much more appreciation. So the calculation that you're going to want to take a look at is the return on investment. You're going to want to find properties that have the highest ROI possible. If you're like my father, who's retired, or maybe you're nearing retirement, or you feel that income is really the best investment benefit for you, then you're going to want to look at properties that have the highest cash-on-cash return. These are two very, very different calculations, and I'm going to explain to you the differences in both. So I've got a great example here of a property in Florida. Now, you remember the appreciation graph we were looking at earlier. Florida had a very high 6.1% when we were looking at 6.1% annual appreciation rate, which was even higher than Orange County on a percentage basis, not necessarily in value, but in a percentage basis, it was even higher. So Florida, a lot of appreciation. This might be a great market for people looking to build wealth or look at appreciation. So we're going to look at a B-class property in Florida. This property is listed for $155,500. This particular property already sold several months ago. I just wanted to use it as an example, but there's dozens more like this on our website. So now remember, we had put a cap on appreciation. So if appreciation in a particular market is above 5%, then we're going to say that the highest appreciation that we're going to expect in that market is 5%. But 5% is going to be for A class, and we're going to move it down to 4.5% for B class or 4% for C class. So here is a almost 10-year-old property. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot home. Very nice, just bread and butter house in Cape Coral, Florida, which is on the west side of the peninsula, about 2 hours south of Tampa. A market that we have an incredible team in, that Terry Duffy actually flying out here next month to Southern California. So just wanted to plug that Terry will be flying out here next month on the, I think it's the 16th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. The details are on our website. So here's a property, a B-class property, and we're looking at all the numbers on the right. So we have the rent of $1,400 a month. On this example, 25% down payment. The interest rate, 4.375%, which is right around what we're looking at today. Interest rates went up a little bit over the last couple months. They might be at 4.5% now. So what we're seeing on this property is all the way down, we go through those expenses. Total monthly expenses, $883. That is our operating expenses. So everything from taxes, insurance, management fee, HOA. Tenants in this example pay the utilities and landscaping. We've got our expenses. So once we deduct all those expenses, we're left with $516 a month of income. Now, don't get fooled here, because a lot of people think that this would be considered your cash flow. And a lot of, especially beginning investors, leave out that potential maintenance and vacancy, especially if they're looking on a website or talking to a real estate company and they haven't put those numbers on there. It's very misleading. So after this information, now you know what's a B-class property because of the price range, $153,000. We know the median is about $190,000, so we know this fits in to a B-class property. Now, $516 is the monthly income. We take out our estimates on a monthly basis of maintenance, vacancy, and leasing. Leasing in this market is 1/2 of the first month's rent. We take that $700 and we divide it by 18 months to get that $38.89. Now we're left with our monthly cash flow, $197 a month. Now, hopefully this example makes sense. There's going to be a lot of months where you make $516 a month with no maintenance, no vacancy. There might even be months where you make more than that if the rent increases. But then there's going to be times where you make nothing, right, if you have a vacancy. In fact, there's going to be months where you make negative dollars if you have a large maintenance item. So we're looking at this example on a 15-year projection. So our average over 15 years without including any rent increase estimate is $197. So let's take a look at the calculation for return on investment. To calculate return on investment, we take the profit from the sale of the property, the profit that we made from owning the property after it's sold. We divide it by the amount of money we spent to buy the property, and then we divide that by the number of years that we held the property. In order to do that, we're going to need all of the numbers you're looking at on your screen here. We're going to have to use a calculator like the one on our website. Because over 15 years, we're going to be making about $35,500, and that's assuming, again, no rent increase. So appreciation. With an appreciation rate of 4.5%, if we use just standard appreciation, not compounded, I like to use standard just to make it a little more on the safe side, a little more conservative, $103,000 of appreciation over 15 years. Principal pay down. We made $40,000 just by paying our mortgage every month, but we never had to reach into our pocket to pay that mortgage because it's a positive cash flow property. We take 9% of that future value after 15 years, and that's $23,000 in selling expenses. We made $155,000 owning this property over a 15-year period. So let's figure out, what does that actually mean? We add up all of the 3 different ways that we profited. I did not include tax benefits because that's going to vary dramatically based on the owner. It's going to vary based on their income level. It's going to vary based on their tax bracket. So I left that out. So $155,000 because we added up cash flow, principal pay down, and appreciation. We subtracted selling expenses. So then we plug the numbers into the formula, 155,334 divided by 45,631.25. Then we divide it by the number of years we held the property. In this example, we held it for 15 years. So our annual return on investment is 22.69%. Once we sold the property, we made 22.69% return on investment every single year. So that example in return on investment, it adds all the money we made, all the money that we spent to sell the property, and then what we're left with, we divide by the number of years we held the property. Just really quick, going back to total cash invested, you can see on the top of your screen there, what did we have to spend to buy the property? Well, we put a down payment, in this example 25%. If you have less than 4 mortgages, you can actually put 20% down. I just use 25% because we actually get a better interest rate when we spend an extra 5%. This property needed a little bit of cosmetic work to it to get it rented, so $1,500 initially, and then we estimated $5,700.56. The formula for how we estimated that is on our website, a little bit detailed, so I won't go over it now. But basically, we spent $45,000 to acquire this property, and that's where we get these numbers right here. 22%, not bad at all, especially since we're using conservative numbers and we're not even including rent increase. Let's talk about cash-on-cash return now. So cash-on-cash return, I'm going to take another B-class property, actually, but a very different market, Memphis, Tennessee. So Memphis, Tennessee, the appreciation rate here, a little bit lower. For a B-class property, 2.8%. So we would put in there 3.3% for A-class or 2.3% for C-class. This property is listed at $115,000, and because the median home price in Memphis is even lower than Florida, this property still fits into a B-class property. You know, one thing I didn't mention, which is extremely important, is you know, we get our data from National Association of Realtors, but in the Reddick Rating ebook, there's actually a link in there that you can click on to obtain the median home price in every major metropolitan market. I think it would be a good time now to mention that on the right side of your screen on your control panel, there should be a section that says handouts. So if you open that little screen and if you click the plus sign next to handouts on your control panel, there should be a download. Now that is the most current version of the Reddick Property Rating ebook. So you can download it now directly right off of your GoToWebinar software. You can get it right on our website. Very easy to find on our website. You can download it right off our website, marshallreddick.com. If you're on our website and you click on the Invest tab at the top, on the right side of the screen, there's a button that says download to learn how to choose the best investments. 38 pages of content, and I'm only able to touch on maybe about 50 or 60% of it tonight. So, okay, back to this particular property. So we use the same information here. Now we notice that for this property, we get actually a little bit more cash flow for a little bit less money invested. We're not going to see the same amount of appreciation over time, but we will see more cash flow for even a little bit less money invested. So for this property at 25% down, it was completely turnkey. We work with a turnkey company in Memphis that provides a ton of great property. $34,000 to acquire the property. It rents for just under $1,300 a month. So it rents for a little over 1% of the purchase price. Take all the same data. Our monthly income, $528 a month on a regular basis. With our estimates of maintenance and vacancy, we use 10% again because it's also a B class. We're left with $233.70 monthly cash flow. So to calculate our cash-on-cash return, we have to take the annual net cash flow. We're going to take that $233. We're going to multiply it by 12. We're going to divide it by the amount of money we spent. So you remember in that last slide, we spent $34,000 to acquire it at 25% down, including closing costs. Closing costs includes everything from home inspection to appraisal costs, processing and underwriting fees, loan origination fees. Many times we end up prepaying a year of homeowners insurance. We might prepay 6 months or 12 months of property taxes. So we have to add all that in there on top of the down payment. $2,800.04, or $2,800, $2,804, that's much easier, divided by 34,326. On an annual basis, just off of the income, not including appreciation or principal paydown, we're making an 8.16% return on this property. That's a significantly high cash-on-cash return. I normally see properties between about 4 and 7%, depending on the property class, of course, but 8.16%, significantly high because we're including our maintenance reserves, we're including vacancies, we're not including rent increases, we're including leasing fees. So this is a very, very accurate number. If you see properties that have double-digit cash-on-cash return, first thing right away, there's probably something missing. Something might not be calculated right. You might be using a very inflated rental amount. You might be using old, outdated property taxes from 3 or 4 years ago. You might be looking at an insurance quote that might not be very accurate. So if you're doing everything correctly, 8% is very high for a cash-on-cash return. Okay, I wasn't sure where I put this slide, but as we're wrapping up here, it's a week away here from Christmas. We're 2 weeks away from New Year's. I really want to wish everybody on the call happy holidays. This is the Marsh Reddick staff. We took this picture about 2 weeks ago. I truly love what I do because I really love the team I'm surrounded by. I've always believed in surrounding myself with brighter, better looking, and and more intelligent people than myself, although I think I'm up there. But our staff is incredible, and many of you have worked with Kristen Tabar on the left. That's Kristen's on the call. I'm going to introduce her in a second. Tanya Lorimore, just to my right, I guess, or to my left if you're looking at the screen. David Kling right beside me, and that's me, by the way, all the way on the very far right. We got Parker Roberts in the very far middle back. Brian Hahn, looking at the screen to the right of Parker. He's our web developer. He's the one that makes our website look so incredible. We've got Christine Lee in the very, very front. She's our marketing manager. Anna, our bookkeeper, behind her. Ross Nelson, my partner and CEO, to the very far left. And we've got our 2 interns, Sargon, who you would notice at a lot of our events, does most of the check-in. And then Carol Lee at the bottom, just to the right of Ross, is our marketing intern. So we all want to wish you folks a very, very, very happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Diwali. I know Diwali was about a month ago. but you know, we really want to wish you all the best holiday season possible. And as we wrap up here, I'm going to introduce Kristen, and Kristen is a very, very, very important part of all of this. She makes all of this possible for our investors, because education is wonderful and you can absorb as much information as possible, but without the right people to help you implement it, then none of it really matters. So that's Kristen's phone number, that's her direct email. She's sitting beside me right now. She's an amazing real estate advisor. As I mentioned, she owns 5 properties. I'm going to have her pick out a couple questions that folks answered. We're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. I'm going to go over a few questions. Kristen, you know, thanks for being patient on the call. All of you guys have the ability to email her, to call her, to set up a schedule, a time that works for you, that you can have her help you figure out which investments make sense, which goals to set. So, Kristen, I'm going to let you handle it from here.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. I hope everybody can still hear me. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. Like Scott said, my name is Kristen. I'm an advisor here. I work with clients buying and selling both primary residences here in Orange County, as well as working with investors such as yourselves that are on the line tonight with out-of-state investment property. My role is to work one-on-one with you guys to help set your investment criteria, identify the markets that fit you best, the property classes that fit you best to achieve your goals, and then together we evaluate properties, and I'm here to hold your hand through the entire purchase process. As Scott mentioned, I own 5 properties of my own. My husband and I bought our first property together in 2012, and we've been steadily increasing our portfolio ever since. Our goal, just to share with you guys, is to replace one of our incomes. Of course, I hope it's mine. He hopes it's his. But we had a baby in April, so one of us eventually wants to stay home with not only him, but maybe any potential future siblings. So that's kind of our goal in real estate. I'm happy to get kind of deeper into the details and, you know, share my experiences with anybody who wants to chat after the webinar. Like Scott said, you can reach out to me directly. My phone number is there on the screen. My email is there as well. So without further ado, there are a couple questions that I wanted to get to. Scott, this one comes from Rami. He says, are the appreciation estimates adjusted for inflation?
Okay, Rami, thanks a lot for the question. So the type of appreciation we decided to go with was just standard appreciation. We didn't use compound appreciation, meaning that if a property goes up, you know, 1 or 2% and it's compounded, you know, then the next year you're taking that appreciation rate off of what the most recent value is, not off of just what the original purchase price was. So we have used the most conservative approach possible. The data came straight from National Association of Realtors. Median home price, we adjust it for the property class. So if you have any other thoughts or ideas on how, I mean, it can be or needs to be adjusted a little bit more, you know, we're all ears, but I think we do adjust it based on the class, property class, and then take the most conservative possible way to increase or to reflect the appreciation. Kristen, I was looking at a question on here. Somebody said, it looks like Angie, why is appreciation and cash flow in opposition of one another? And I think that's a pretty good question. You know, why can you only have, you know, if you have higher appreciation, why do you get lower cash flow? If you have higher cash flow, why do you have lower appreciation? Great question. So the appreciation of a property, what we find is it might increase the value, but we might not see the same increase in rental. So these appreciation figures that we have, especially on an A-class property, we'll find that the value of the property increases at a faster rate than the rent does. Now, the value of a particular property, we know, is going to depend on the location or the neighborhood, but it can depend on a lot of other factors as well, too. Like in California, it could depend on things like weather, on the political environment of an area, the economic environment of an area. And so it is really a lot more emotion in many cases that goes into home values increasing or decreasing. With rents is a function of median income or median salary in a particular market, as well as supply and demand. So with an A-class property, you're just going to see a much larger increase in values over time than rents. Because the values are increasing faster than the rents, that produces less and less and less of an opportunity for cash flow. Now, if you look on the far right of the scale, let's say C-class properties, we're going to see the exact opposite. We're going to see that the rental amount on that property is increasing at a faster rate than the home value. Now, a good example is Memphis. In Memphis is a much larger percentage of people who rent properties than own properties. Because there's such a larger percentage of people who rent properties, it puts a lot more pressure on the rental market. There's a lot more demand, so that tends to have a little bit more of an impact on rents increasing. However, Memphis, as I showed you on the graph, is not particularly a market that sees significantly high appreciation. Now, that's for many other different reasons. You know, there's a strong job market there, but there's not as much of a driving force in moving there as a place like Florida, where everybody wants to retire there, or California, where everybody wants to own their dream home close to the coast. So a little bit less of a attraction, I guess, to owning there. A lot more people renting there, so the rents are increasing more over time. When you have rents increasing faster than home values, you have more and more and more of a chance for appreciation. So, and that's really how it works within real estate, is that there really are very few, if any, examples where we see home price values increasing at the same rate as rents do. Now, a really quick example, again, before we wrap up, is the property that I own in Phoenix. Phoenix, at one time, the median home prices were at about $250,000 in 2007. Now, that significantly dropped, and when I bought my property in 2010, I bought it for $96,000. It sold brand new 3 years before for $207,000, so it dropped 60%. Now, what's very interesting about that is that the rent barely changed at all. The rental amount on that property in 2007 was about $950. Now, and when I purchased it in 2010 at the bottom of the market, it only decreased to $850 because we had so many people who had to now move into properties and become renters. So, you know, even though we see such dramatic increases and decreases in values, rental amounts, they tend to have much less of a dramatic increase or decrease in home value. So I hope that answered your question. So, you know, we do have a lot more really good questions, but I want to be mindful of everybody's time, and I know we went a little bit over here. So Kristen is going to follow up with many of you who have asked really good questions that we didn't get a chance to respond to. She'll make sure to reach out, or either Kristen or her assistant Parker will follow up with all of you who asked these excellent questions. You can keep them coming, and we'll make sure to answer them directly with you over the phone or through email. I want to thank everyone again for being on the call tonight. Happy holidays. I hope you have all a beautiful holiday season and an amazing start to 2016. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.